What might it look like to reimagine community? What is an intergenerational friendship? And why does it matter? What does it take to make community age friendly? And why should you care? Friends, this is what we are chasing today. And I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation because I learned a ton, and maybe you will too. Laura Poskin is a gerontologist and passionate advocate working to make the world a better place to grow old. She is executive director of Age Friendly Greater Pittsburgh, a leader in the World Health Organization and AARP network of age-friendly communities. Over the past 8 years, Laura has built a coalition of over 120 organizations and inspired neighbors to be more inclusive and respectful of all ages. Laura started her career in media at People and Jane and Good Housekeeping magazines. During her graduate work in Ohio and Bangkok, she studied aging and demographic change from Western and Eastern perspectives. I think you're going to really love what she has to say. I have known Laura since middle school, and we are not middle schoolers anymore. We are in our early 40s, and right, you're over 40.
I'm 41. Yeah.
41. We're both 41. We have known each other since middle school, but it has been years since we've had an in-person conversation or an online conversation. Laura Poskin, it is so good to see your face today and to be talking with you.
It's so good to see you, Angela. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I am so excited to dive into your work today, a field that I think is wildly important, but really misunderstood or little understood, and a field that we all need in our communities, for somebody to be talking about, thinking about, and we all need to participate in the kind of work that you're cultivating. But before we jump into the importance of your work, why it matters to me, why I think it should matter to all of us who are listening, I think we should start with how we met, which was at the School for the Creative and Performing Arts. Not to be like
AKA SCAPA.
it sounds so bougie, I feel like, when I say it. We went to the School for the Creative and Performing Arts.
The school. Yes.
But truly, you were just saying right before we started recording that it's a special place. What did you mean by that? What do you mean by it?
So I came to SCAPA when I was in 7th grade. Not the easiest time in your life, right?
Right.
But I look back at those times and I think about middle school and I was like, what a magical experience. Like we had such a loving environment. We had people around us who cared about us. We were exploring and being creative in everything. Like I think back to it was homeroom, but it was also math class. Miss McLaughlin's math class, 7th grade and 8th grade. We would start every class off by reading from a book, from a random acts of kindness book. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like just a moment of pause before, and this is a public school,
Yeah.
a moment of pause to be like, what does it mean to be a good human? Like, that's amazing. Like, it could have been like, we're doing the problem of the day because this is math class. But it was like, no, let's do that. We also used to, do you remember we used to dance in that class just like random times? There was the, I would walk 500 miles, that song. We would sometimes just like break into that song. What were we even doing?
I know. We basically are saying that we wish all of you an experience like SCAPA in your life. Like whether you're 41 or 71 or 7, we hope that you all have a community that's like this, where you dance randomly, where you talk about what it means to be a good person before you dive into how to be a good at something. You know what I mean? There was this difference in that community. Like it wasn't just about being good at things. It really was about building character and nurturing a community of people. And then, as Laura said, this was a public school. So, yes, we had to audition to get into it, but our parents didn't have to pay for it, which is just unbelievable. It was such a gift to me and to my family because my mom was a single mom. My parents were divorced at that time, and if money was a thing, I wouldn't have been able to go to that school.
Mhm.
And so it was just, but yeah, the gift too, like every day for people who don't know about SCAPA, every single day, Monday through Friday, in my case, from fourth to eighth grade, my major was creative writing. Everyone had a major that you got into SCAPA with.
Major, minor, and elective.
Right.
Yes.
Well, yeah, by sixth grade. But like fourth and fifth grade, you got to
Oh,
like do whatever you wanted after. So every day, Monday through Friday, you did like a different thing after your major. And then in sixth grade, you had to choose a minor, and you did that Monday, Wednesday, Friday after your major. And then, and then you did your elective Tuesday, Thursdays. And so the other thing what we're saying is that every day for like 3 hours a day, you spent time invested in the arts. And it was, so we're talking about everything from illustrative arts to dance, several forms of dance to different forms of musical instruments that people could choose for like band or orchestra, or voice or, and so at theater, like there were all these different majors that you got in for and then that you could choose from for your minor and elective. And so you spent a good majority of your time there just investing in the arts and being creative and imaginative with your peers.
and even if you were in your social studies class, it would be like, let's learn about ancient
That's
Egypt
right.
with this creative project.
Yes.
Let's learn, if you're in math class, let's learn about perimeters
Hmm.
by doing this really creative project. And it's this experiential learning style. And I mean, because we're talking today, I'm thinking about it in relation to my work.
Yes.
I usually don't, but it was such a formative experience. And just this idea of putting I mean, I think about that random acts of kindness. It's such a 90s thing, right? Wasn't that like a really big in the 90s, that random acts of kindness? But just putting that first, and that is just essential. That's
Hmm.
just essential. And I am so grateful that we met and that we both got to experience that. And
Yeah.
kids are still experiencing that. It is thriving, I think.
Hmm.
I've heard.
Yeah. Well, and I just think it's important to point out that most of the people that we went to school with to this day utilize the skills, the competencies, the things that they learned in at SCAPA in their careers. So many of our friends, that is at the heart of their career. And so that brings me to your work. You think a lot about,
I'm not a professional pianist. I was a piano major.
but how do you feel like what SCAPA did for you? How does that play into your work?
I think at the end of it, so I'm a gerontologist, and that means that I often say I'm trying to make the world a better place to grow old. We're all aging. We all deserve and should be included in life our whole life.
Mm,
You talked about people like we have to be able to participate in life our whole life. And so I think SCAPA was just in that experience of going to a performing arts school, being really into the creative arts, was just such a welcoming space. And so I think that's made me want to consider what communities are like, and are they welcoming
mhm,
people of all ages? And, you know, I was really close with my grandparents. I was really close
mhm,
with my neighbors growing up.
mhm,
I just remember going over to my neighbor Estelle's house. This was not in Kentucky, but before that, I just remember going over to her house. She was probably in her 80s, lived alone. I would just go over to her house and she would make me jello and we would talk, and I would ask her about her really cool teacups that she had. And I just remember that was really important. And my parents taught me that. And I think I just understood that, there's this really rich experience of coming together with people of other ages.
mhm,
And I experienced that when I was living in New York City early in my career, when I was working in media. So I wasn't always a gerontologist. I was working in magazines, and when magazines were a thing, I mean, they still
mhm.
are, but the media industry is a little different now.
Yeah.
But the most valuable part of my week was a volunteer opportunity where I would hang out with my friend Arthur. And he was in his 80s. He was living with dementia. He lived by himself with a caregiver. And we would just go to the farmer's market, or we would get like catch a show together, and just hear like being around someone with a perspective that's different than mine became it just became really important. And I realized what I was experiencing was something that a lot of people were experiencing. I didn't feel very connected to my community
Mm.
living in New York. And I had a lot of friends, but we were just kind of like flitting around the city doing things. But it was a time to sit and slow down and talk to each other. And I realized that it was just so important. And I realized that I wanted older adults to be able to experience life their whole life in their communities. Arthur loved, his favorite thing was walking up and down Manhattan. And when I knew him, he was in a wheelchair.
Mhm.
And it was like, that's a shame that it's really hard for him to get out and explore the city and be part
Mhm.
of the city. Um, yeah, it's a shame for him, but it's also really a shame for like all the other people around who could, like me, who were benefiting from this amazing person who's a community member.
Yes.
Like other people, like, meeting Estelle. And this is like totally getting off of um, the, the SCAPA track, but not really. It's just kind of finding that value, finding that understanding that like we're all in this together.
Well, there was
Um,
something about SCAPA, I feel like, that told us all everyone has a gift.
yeah,
Everyone's here for, like, we all had this sense that we were chosen, we're included, we're affirmed. These deep human needs were met in this community. And
that's a really
so
good
no
point.
matter how old we are, we want to feel chosen. We want to feel included.
That's so
We want to,
nice.
right? Like that, like not, that doesn't change whether we're 5 or we're 95. Like we want to feel that way. We want to feel seen. We want to feel affirmed, and so SCAPA taught us, I think, about what it looks like to embody those sorts of things in a community, to invite, to live out those things in a community with people. But also what you're saying is that you need Arthur as much as Arthur needs you. You need Arthur. And what we don't realize sometimes is oftentimes it's in relating with other people that like our lives are filled up like the way that they are, right? So for example, when I worked with youth for a long time, like 14 years of my career has been, investing in the lives of young people. And I guess you could even say as a professor, a lot of my master's students were still quite young because they came straight from bachelor's and, into a master's program. Oftentimes when I was working with youth, people would tell me, I can't be a youth leader. I can't volunteer in the youth program because I'm not young and cool at 22 or 25, And I would say, like, no, we don't just need 25-year-olds to invest in teenagers, and middle schoolers, we need 75-year-olds to do it. And there's this thing that happens when you put older people in a room with younger people. I feel like that younger people have a naivete that oftentimes that we need. They're a little bit innocent about what's possible and what's not in a way that's really beautiful, because as we age, sometimes we think, I don't know that that's possible anymore, but they have this way of seeing the world, oftentimes this energy and this motivation and inspiration to cultivate change where there needs to be change. They have a passion that's often contagious for older people. Like that's why we need younger people, right? At the same time, older people have wisdoms to pass on to us. They have stories, they have lived, they have experience, they have
Experience. Yeah.
perspective. They have most of them have suffered and they've learned a lot from the suffering. They know what it is to move through suffering. They know how to get to the other side. We need to know that it's possible to get to the other side of suffering. Like there's lots that they can offer us. And that so back and forth, we need every generation,
And you said before we started recording, you said the word mutuality. The word that we use is reciprocity, but it's the
Uh,
same thing. It's
yeah,
this
yeah,
back and forth. It's
yeah.
like I might be the volunteer with Arthur, but who is really gaining from this? We are both learning from each other. Little skill, small skills or kind of important ones, like maybe a younger generation might be really fluent on your phone and can like show, an older person, and not to say that all older people are like at the same skill level when it comes to digital literacy, like little skills, but then also just like this way of being in the world. Like it is such a special, I love the idea of bringing generations together and being really having solidarity between
Yeah.
between generations and different ages. And so that's like really what the work of age friendly communities is all about. And
Yeah.
so,
So what
yeah,
do you say the word age friendly or the phrase? What do you mean by that? How do you define it for people?
yeah. So we always talk about age friendly being making our world more inclusive and respectful of all ages. So that might be the built environment, like a sidewalk. Might, if a sidewalk is going to be better for someone who's 86, who's using a mobility device, maybe it's going to be better for a 6-year-old who has a giant backpack. It's going to be better for me, a 41-year-old mom who's pushing a wagon and,
Right.
looking all around. If we make that built environment better for older adults, it's going to be better for all ages. If we make our social environment, make opportunities open to people of all ages, make work opportunities or volunteer opportunities or like ways to get to the polls, if it's made better for our older population, is going to be better for everyone. And so this probably is news to no one, but our population is growing older and really rapidly. A lot of people, talk about boomers. Suddenly, and you might not know this, but every day 12,000 people turn 65.
Wow. Yeah.
That's incredible, and that's something that it's our new demographic reality. The
Mhm.
fact that this is just, and it's, I think some people are kind of like, oh no, all the challenges that come with that. And certainly there are challenges, but it means that, if we're designing a sidewalk, if we're designing an opportunity, and we want everyone to be able to access it, we need to understand if our world is growing older, we're going to have a population that the population that we're serving is this population of older people. And if we think about making it better, if we make wider sidewalks, if we make the countdown longer when you're trying to cross the street, if you make those yellow truncated domes that are on the ground that are actually meant for people with visual impairment, but actually, oh, I can see better at night. Like, it's also kind of the idea of universal design.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you design something, it's going to actually be better for everyone. That OXO brand that you can buy at Target or whatever, that is way easy, like ergonomically, it's like way easier to use that can opener. It's like that's better for someone who has arthritis. And it's also way easier for me as I'm cooking dinner.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of getting people to think about the fact that our population is aging, and that's an opportunity for us to reimagine what our communities look like. So an age-friendly place to live we sometimes say, is a good place to grow up, and it's a good place to grow old. And the secret sauce of that, I think, as I've said, is bringing generations together to better understand one another and appreciate each other.
Yeah, and you actually gave an amazing TEDx talk, and it's called Reimagining Communities for All Ages. And it's going to be linked in the show notes if you all want to watch this incredible talk that Laura gave. But could you give us a little peek into that talk? And also, even like since then, um, what does it mean to reimagine a community? If you could build a community, if you were like the mayor of a town, Laura, and you should be a governor,
So should
you
you.
should be the president. No. If you were going to just build a town or a community from scratch, other than the things that you've already mentioned, what does it look like? I think if you could say more maybe about people running into each other, doing life together across generations, what does that look like? What does it take?
Okay. Yeah. Great question. So I'll start with an example, and then maybe I'll like
Yeah.
work my way into it. Um, we started a program that's called Coffee Connect, which is about, um, when you go into a coffee shop and you're like, I'm in this place that's outside of my house, and then you look around and everybody's on their device.
Yep.
I mean, who's not been there, right? Or you're on your phone, or people are not connecting with one another. We started this project called Coffee Connect, where we would partner with a local coffee shop, and we would have placards that were on the table or at the cash register. And so as you bought a cup of coffee, you would take a placard and you'd have to make a decision. One side would say, "Hi, I'm open for conversation." And the other side would say, "Sorry, not right now, maybe another time." So you just trained your brain to think, I am in this space where I am in the public. This is, again, as an opportunity to talk to people that I might not talk
Mhm.
to.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting because so today's Wednesday, Thursday, tomorrow, we're celebrating our 100th Coffee Connect. We
Wow.
transitioned it to being online during the pandemic. And they still meet online. Sometimes they meet in person, but just this idea of it's this very simple idea of connecting with one another instead of connecting to your device.
Mhm.
And I'm not like, certainly there are many good things about being online, staying up to date with what's happening.
Mhm.
You kind of have to be online on your device, certainly. And, I'm not perfect by any means in this way. Like, I spend plenty of time zoning out on my phone. But I
Mhm.
think if we find ways to truly connect with one another, we are going to be happier. We're going to be healthier.
Mhm.
Um, and we're going to just build a community that we want to live in. And I think, I, I think as we consider like how we want to show up in the world, we need to think first about how we're being kind to one another. I ask my kids every day when they go to school, I say, what are the two things you're going to be today? And what they say is, I'm going to be a good helper and I'm going to be a good friend. It's kind
I love it.
of related to my work. But I just think at the end of the day, we're supposed to be a good helper and we're supposed to be a good friend.
Mhm.
And some of that means like making sure that everyone has access to that event that you're putting on, like
Oh, yes.
everybody can get there transportation wise, everyone can register for it. So it's not like you're registering online only. It's like there's a phone number to call. So that is like it's like increasing accessibility
Yeah.
so that, whether you're older, whether you're someone who's new to this country, whether you're someone who's just, trying to join something and participate in life, that
Yeah.
it's kind of like lowering, or not, I shouldn't say lowering the barrier, but it's just like making our
I actually
everything
think that
more welcoming.
yeah, 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 yeah. But I think you don't wanna have barriers to participation. Like, I like
Yeah.
that idea of just thinking about what are all the possible barriers to participation in this event, and how do I remove as many as possible or
Yeah.
lower them as much as possible? I think
Yeah.
that's so great. And then, like, one of the things I want you to keep going, sorry. I just one of the things that I had my students do in one of my classes was when they were thinking it was a class called Teaching for Transformation. And
Mhm.
one of the things we did was think about the physical spaces that we teach in. And I was saying, like, every place that you teach in teaches. So it's not just you that teaches, every space teaches. And it tells you multiple things. It tells you, for example, where is the power in this space? So we walked all over campus and I would ask these questions. Where is the power in this space? And is it where you want it to be? When
Interesting.
you're teaching, is the power where you
Interesting.
want it to be? Is it in the center of the room if it needs to be there? Is it and then what does this space invite? What sort of actions does it suggest to people? This is what should happen here. Like, so for example, if you want people to really interact with each other, but everyone's in rows facing you, that doesn't suggest to everybody you should all be interacting with each other. It suggests you should listen to me. So the
Yeah.
physical space teaches them to participate in a particular way or not. And then what things does the space also avoid or neglect or whatever, right? And then I ask them as well, like, if imagine that you're someone who's using a mobility device to get into this space. Is it easy or is it hard to get into this space? Where are the barriers? And we would talk, and so many of them, for many of them, they were most surprised at how the place where they worshiped on Sunday morning, how difficult it was, because I had them think about their week and they had to talk about different spaces and how, when they entered into them, whether it was easy or hard if you were using a mobility device to get into them. And a worship center was one of the places, because many of them are older in the United States, right? Some of the oldest buildings that we have are worship centers. And oftentimes they're very difficult to get into.
And if they're going to have money to do something, maybe it's that they want to put it towards the people and they don't think, oh, this space is also putting it towards the people if we make it really open. But I mean, it's expensive to install an elevator in an old building. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But also, I know of, like, sometimes you can have like a team of people who can create a ramp, right? And they come together on a Saturday, and it could be older people and younger people working together, and they learn to build something, like they just volunteer a few hours of their time, and before you know it, but or you move things from other space. Like I know of a worship center where they were having the choir meet in a loft for years upon years, and they loved the idea of them, and that's the thing too. It's like, what do you value more? And one of the values held for a really long time was, we want the choir to be above us, as sort of like like a group of heavenly
Up,
hosts,
down.
right?
Yes,
It's like
yes.
filling, and I can get the sentiment there that they want the space to have a sense of sacredness. But then the problem was, as the choir was aging, people could not get up to the loft. So then they left the choir. They stopped being a part of it because they couldn't get there anymore, because the building was old and there was no elevator. Well, it's like,
Mhm.
well, what do we care about more? Everyone being able to participate,
Including everyone. Yeah.
or this nostalgia for the way that things have always been done? And so I
That's a
love,
great example. It's a great example. And then think about someone who broke their leg
yeah,
at
thank you.
any age and suddenly, oops, can't be in the choir right now. Or you just had a C-section
Yep.
and you can't, I mean, you're probably not going to be part of the choir if you just gave birth. But what I'm trying to say is that change, it's going to be better for older adults and it's
Right.
going to be better for everyone. It's the same for, like, we sometimes talk about a menu at a restaurant. Like, say you have a menu with pictures and large, clear font. That's going to be better for someone who's living with dementia. It's also going to be better for someone who is learning English as a second language. It's going to
Yeah.
be better for a child who's learning to read and wants to exert their independence and be able to, so it's just kind of like,
Love
how
that.
can we redesign our communities together to make them better grow up and grow old? And I love that example. And I love how you're already integrating age friendly into the work you do. We talk about this as age friendly in the wild, like you even incorporating that into your curriculum. I haven't talked to you in years, sadly, but you're already doing it. It's age friendly in the wild. You understand the value of that, and you teaching that is gonna flip the switch for somebody when they're thinking, why do we have that on the second floor when we have a first floor that is way easier to get to? Or
Mhm.
and just really thinking, like, how is this space going to be person centered and to help everyone feel welcome
Mhm.
and able to access it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, well, I just want to, when you were talking about the menus thing too, I was just thinking the other day, I wanted to leave my phone at home on purpose to go to brunch. And I like wanted to be present at brunch, And I get to the brunch and they only have ways to scan, like the menu are all
My
scanning,
God.
right? Maybe it's not even like an accessibility thing with devices. This is an example, I think, of where are our values? Do we value efficiency? I don't know if you want to say something about that, but like, in a culture, in American culture, I think that one of the things that trumps all things that really gets in the way of community, of relationship, is this desire to do things as efficiently and quickly as possible. And so we design spaces like that. We use devices for those reasons instead of in-person communication or longer, we're just all the time, like, we are prioritizing, how can I do this as efficiently and quickly as possible? As
Quickly
if,
as possible.
like that is auto, and I think we assume that that's the best way. If it's efficient and fast, it has to be the best way to do this thing.
gosh. Well, can I first just say I totally feel I am with you on this 100%. And one of the things that in my personal life is the hardest for me is when I feel rushed. I do not like to feel rushed. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to explore this. Is actually an epiphany that I had the other day. I was like, that is the thing that I like the least. And that's in part just this culture of like rush, rush, rush. We are overstimulated. There's so many things going on. So we have to do it quickly and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I want to be able to take my time. I, I want to be able to have a thoughtful response to something. I
Mhm.
don't want to have to rush through my inbox. I want, like when we feel like we're in this culture that is go, 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 how can we step back from that? So like what the antidote is to that? I mean, taking our time, connecting with one another, I mean, it's yeah, I think we just have to carve out that time and
Mhm.
be like, that's you and decide what is useful time,
Mhm.
like is stopping and talking to a neighbor useful time? Yeah.
Mm.
Is my priority to stop and talk to my neighbor Judy because I know that her sister has cancer and she's going through a really hard time? Or do I need to be at that meeting exactly on time?
Mhm.
It's these decisions that we make all the time,
Mhm.
and
Mm.
we get to decide what we prioritize. I mean, so this is another example from our work. So wanted we knew that this is interesting. So riding the bus, transportation, having different options for transportation across our lifetime is so important. We wanted to find a way to train new bus operators
Mm.
to be more age friendly, to be mindful of the people that were riding the bus and make sure that they were having a really good experience.
Mhm.
So we asked older riders, what makes a good experience on the bus. Um, First of all, we heard from folks that oftentimes they ride the bus not to go anywhere, but just to talk, like getting on the bus
Goodness.
to
Wow.
talk. And it
Wow.
was really important to them that the bus driver knew their name. It was really important to them that they lowered the bus without them having to ask.
Yeah.
Like the idea, like even lowering the butt, like that's I've been on a bus before where you're just trying to get somewhere on time and you're like, my gosh, like this is taking longer than it's supposed to be taking. And that requires time.
Mhm.
But what's the time well spent there? That is time well spent making sure that someone can get onto the bus.
Mhm.
Hi, Mrs. Jones. It's so good to see you. And like just being known,
Yeah.
that is so key and I think the antidote to this rush culture that I can't we have to decide to push back on it,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And it is our culture. Like you go to other parts of the world and they're not as worried about starting the meeting on time. And it's different cultures within the United States too, but like, we decide what we value and
Okay. I got it, Laura. I love this because I just invite listeners that, bus drivers are the example in this, but what does it mean to train your team, whatever team that you're on? What does it mean for all of you to educate yourselves? What does it mean for all of us? I'll include myself too, right? How do we educate ourselves in such a way that we all are more age friendly in whatever, right? So as I move throughout my day, what does it look like, for me to be more age friendly in the ways that I walk through the grocery store, as I walk down the sidewalks or stroll down the sidewalks. And even like in our language, right? I just said walk. Some people, but
yeah.
I learned in my own writing and speaking that the best thing that I can do, because I do talk to people of all ages a lot of the time, is I could use the word stroll. And people who are using mobility devices stroll, and people who are walking stroll. And so I say you can go on a stroll and do such and such. And then I'm more inclusive of everyone of all different kinds of abilities and disabilities and ages when I'm talking. And so we can be more mindful of our language and how like we can be more mindful as we move through our day of the physical spaces that we inhabit with other people. And then also, like you said, trying to understand what are the practices of people, what are the actions that people can take that say to people that are just that take just like one more moment, but that suggest, oh, I see you. I care about you. I want you here. I'm glad
Yes,
you're here.
yes.
You know what I mean? I'm glad you're here. And the other thing that I want to touch on is just I was when I was teaching in on the African continent. I was in a couple of different countries, in Ethiopia and in Kenya. And particularly, I remember when I was in Limuru, Kenya, teaching a leadership seminar with all these different people from all kinds of professions. And really, I wasn't like teaching them leadership. I was the person who was like facilitating a conversation among people who already are incredible leaders, but really they needed time together and they needed someone to like ask particular questions about how they could work together more across organizations. So that's all. I was really just a facilitator of conversation among these leaders. But whenever I would send them on a lunch break, like I tried to give them like an American lunch break, and I'd be like, "Okay, I'll see you back here in 30 minutes." Like I remember on the first day, you know, and they all like brought their lunches, and then they would go outside to eat together. And so I'm thinking, yeah, like we could do this in 30 minutes because we're not like leaving the campus, we're not whatever. And like we wouldn't start the first day is when I learned very quickly we didn't start for about an hour and a half. And then like someone had to come and tell my American self, like here in Kenya, like relationships really matter. And so we're never going to like brush a conversation for the sake of being on time. Like we're never going to care more about being on time than about talking and being very present with whoever we're with. And so they can prioritize relationships if you want. And I'm just even thinking about you're like making me think so much today, Laura, about my own life and like the things that make life worth living are these oftentimes for me. Most of what makes life worth living is unplanned. But if we plan our lives in such a way that we have meetings back to back to back, if I plan my workday so that I have no time for anything unplanned to happen, I'm definitely not going to have time to be age friendly, to be present with people, for spontaneous conversation to happen.
To listen, to listen
Yeah,
is so important.
right.
And just to listen to yourself, to listen to other people. That's so interesting. And we're over programmed in
Yeah.
general, you know? And so I do think, I mean, slowing down, it's hard to do, but like carving out time to slow down. Is that the
Yeah.
answer?
Well, just what does it look like for each one of us to say, okay, I have 7 hours in this workday plus some lunchtime or whatever, or 8 hours in this workday, or however long your workday is, right? I have that much time. I'm going to schedule 5 hours of that day because
And I'm going to leave it
inevitably
open.
everything will run over. And also, I want to have some time for things to be able to be more present. If we're trying to start out today, beyond like thinking about the events that we're planning, where do we start?
Hmm. So you mentioned language, and I think that is a great place to start. So I do what's called age dropping, which is kind of like name dropping, but you just kind of insert your age into common conversation. You did it from the start. You were like, we're in our early 40s. And then I was like, I'm 41. But oftentimes, like, somehow we hide our age, and that's ageism, probably. And I think and know that age is part of our identity. It's part of who we are. It's part of how we show up in the world. And I think it's really powerful to own your age, to celebrate your age, to understand that we're all aging from the moment that we're born. Like, how cool is that, right? I think oftentimes, especially in the field of aging, we kind of talk about like those other people that are aging. And
Mm,
if we can make the switch to like,
good.
we're all aging,
Yeah.
our aging population, you know, I think that is so, it's just so powerful because it's not those other people, it's us.
Yeah.
Right. And so then, you know, if you are trying to make the case to your congregation that we should move the choir from up above to the bottom, like hey, this is actually going to be better for all of us. It's going to be better for you. It's going to be better for me. It's a way of calling everyone in and
Mhm.
all being a part of aging. So I think that that's really important. You've also said older instead of elderly. We know that older is relative, like everyone's older than someone. It's the preferred term. Like if you're reading the literature, it's older adults, older people. We say older neighbors, older Pennsylvanians, older California. Use older, not elderly or senior citizens. You still see seniors showing up sometimes, and you know, is what it is. Of course, I care more about the sentiment behind things than the actual words, but I think people are oftentimes like, well, what are some things that I can do? And there are simple language switches, saying living with instead of suffering from. Like I said earlier, like my friend Arthur living with dementia. I don't know what his experience was like. I wasn't living it. I can't say he was suffering from it, right? So we can say living with.
Mhm.
Um, Also, our culture oftentimes attaches cute and adorable to older adults, especially you see that a lot on social media. Like, that's so cute. Oh my gosh, look at them. Like, look at those cute old ladies out for lunch. That's so great.
Mhm.
That is infantilization or comparing old age to childhood, which you hear people do that a lot. Like, even if you're kind of making a joke about it
Mhm.
yourself.
Mhm.
Um, like, oh, someday I'll have to wear diapers too, or something, like something like that.
Mhm.
We don't do that because that just really is not the respectful thing to do. There's so many other adjectives as a creative writing major at SCAPA. Angela, you could come up with so many better adjectives to use and cute and adorable when it comes to that. Like that's amazing. I love seeing, there are just simple ways that you can say, I love seeing the fact that there's so many different ages in this room. Another thing that I've been thinking about lately, and I have a feeling you're going to love this example because I know you love to dance,
Mhm.
is I've been thinking a lot about like what's like the epitome of an age-friendly space. And I've been thinking about the dance floor at a wedding.
Mm.
Think about if it's a dance floor, if there's a lot of different music that comes on.
Mhm.
You have people there who are not only your family, you have friends there, people from different stages of your life,
Mhm.
all mixed in one spot. It's flat. Everybody's doing their own thing. Some people are like doing one dance. And my gosh, when the electric slide comes on, people know the electric slide from different parts of their life. Or if they don't, there's always that nice person who's like, let me show you how to do the electric slide. I just think if we can take that wedding dance floor concept and apply it to our classrooms, apply it to, my gosh, I'm having a birthday. I'm having a birthday party. Instead of inviting the usual suspects, which in my case, I mean, I say this for myself. If I'm going to have a party for my birthday, I'm probably inviting a lot of people who are around 40. Could I invite my 76-year-old coworker? Sure. Could I invite my neighbor, Judy, who I just told you about, who's in her 80s and like going through a different time? Yeah, I love Judy. Like, how can we make whatever space? And that's like it's a challenge to you to think like, who do I naturally gravitate towards? Who do I welcome into my life? Who are the other students who are sitting in this classroom? And would it be an even richer conversation if we reached out to an emeritus professor to join us one day?
I was so inspired by everything you said. And I think, don't you say that in your TEDx talk, like that you should tell everybody how old you are?
I do. I do. I think I talk about age dropping.
I listened to it right away. And ever since then, Laura, I do that because of you. I tell people all the time how old I am. And for me, the reason why I do it too is because it also rearranges what people think is possible for different people in different bodies. For example, like for me, I'm a female in a field that's very male dominated. And then I also look a lot younger. I tend to look a lot younger than I am. I'm about a decade-ish younger than I am, depending on the day, like sometimes even, you know, and so when I walk into a room and people are like, you have a PhD and you're a
Yeah.
woman and you're talking about this thing like theology and philosophy and this and that, women who are 41 can do that.
Yes.
And so when you share about who you are, you open up possibilities in people's imagination for, like, you know, like not everyone who talks about philosophy and theology looks like this, you know, or is this old or whatever. This can be, you know, and so I think we all free other people too to go, yeah, like maybe I could do that as well. And so, and I think the same maybe of your field. Like, I don't know that everyone imagines that someone who specializes in gerontology and in aging, you know, looks like Laura Poskin, you know, but you're like, this is something that someone who looks like Laura can do and who is 41 like Laura can do and dedicate their whole life to. We don't have to all, because I think a lot of times we only care about things when they directly impact us. So, for example, we might only think about aging when we're left out of something for some reason because we've aged out of it, quote unquote.
Mhm.
You know, all of a sudden, oh, we do care about this thing. No, like
Mhm.
we all need to care about aging because we're all aging. You know, the other thing I just want to touch on that you're saying that I think is really important is this language thing. A lot of people think that language is about being politically correct. And I just want to say on the record here, public service announcement, it's not. Language creates action. Language creates and nurtures identity. Language is everything. We understand ourselves, the world around us, you know, so think about it like the way that we label someone else creates a reality and makes and helps us to make sense of that reality. And so, like the moment that you married Joe, right, you're like, you're my husband. That language created a reality that now you live into. I'm committed to you. We're spending our life together. That language has power. And the language, so the
The
words you
story you're writing together, or it's the story that you're writing, the narrative that you
Mhm.
have. It's also such a simple switch, right? As soon as you know, make us it's simple and just so impactful. Like why not update things? And I think it's also as someone as a gerontologist, as the executive director of Age Friendly Greater Pittsburgh, I think it's really important that we call people into this work and not call them out. And I'm sure you do this beautifully, but I'm just saying, like, if someone is using elderly or whatever, like, I don't need to get in there and say, you're doing the wrong thing or, you know, um, but it's just, it's something simple that we can call people into, that we can, it's just another way of welcoming people. It's another way of including people and being kind to each other and not necessarily calling it out, but modeling in our own language sometimes, or when the time is right to pull somebody aside and be like, you know what, like when you said that, it made me think about, I was just listening to this podcast and actually, I think, saying older might be a better way, just kind of like telling someone they have, something on
Yeah.
their teeth, like just,
Yeah.
you don't have to do it in front of everybody, but
Yeah.
you can say that. I want to say something quickly, like when you said, like, I'm relatively young to be working in aging, it's true. And I've been in rooms where I've been giving a presentation. There was this big launch of a long-term planning process in our state, and the Secretary of Aging was there, and I age dropped, said I was 41, like in my spiel. And then somebody piped up from the audience. Like I said, oh, we're all aging. And they said, you're not aging, Laura. You're so young. And you just have, or sometimes when people say, maybe to you, 41, you don't look 41. And instead of being like, thanks, I think that's an initial response, like, thanks, I don't. And then it's like, why are we saying thanks? Because we're equating old age to bad, like old age to like lonely or, like decline. And instead of just kind of, and again, like of reading the room, figuring out when the time is right, but being like, what should 41 look like?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Should my hair be different because I'm 41? Should I wear different earrings because I'm 41? Should I? And then it's all like you think about it and you're like, society has imposed all of those things on what we should be doing at age 41. Or there is a theory in gerontology called social clocks. And that's kind of like this idea of like, when you're this age, you should be doing this. And are you on time? Like, maybe when you're this age, you should have this many, 2.1 kids or whatever it is. And it's just like, this is all a social construction, right? This is all a social construction. And how can we just kind of be challenging those in our own heads? And that's ageism. And we've been working on this more and more in the work that we do. Ageism is how we think, feel, and act towards others and towards ourselves based on age. So it's thinking like, okay, I work in gerontology. I want to make it a more age-friendly community. It's not necessarily like about those, this is sort of the language thing, right? It's not about those other people over there. It's about all of us. I am aging, you're aging, we're all aging. And the way, like, age beliefs are internalized as early as age 3.
Mm.
I mean, that's like what we see in Bluey. It's what we see on Disney. Like it's just like these ideas of old age being a decline.
Mm.
And we know the research out there tells us all sorts of different things. There's one of my idols who's at Stanford, Laura Carstensen. Her research is all about how, we're in our 70s is actually like the peak of our emotional life.
Mm.
And, like thinking of, and, this is not Laura Carstensen's research, but like entrepreneurs in their 50s and 60s are way more successful than like entrepreneurs in our 20s. And we don't think about like older people starting businesses.
Mm.
But if we allow our communities to be places where people can participate in life, their whole life, wow, there's so much potential there. And turning it back on ourselves, don't you want that for your own life?
Yeah.
Like, don't you want to be able to live life the way that you want it and access your community at age 41 and at age 81, 91, 101? We talk a lot in the aging world. There's this concept of aging in place, which, and I think with COVID and all the awful things that happened in nursing homes, like I think people understand this concept of being able to age at home as long as possible. Like most people want that. They don't want to enter some sort of facility. But there's a difference between aging in place and aging in community.
Mm.
Aging in place, like being in your living room in a lazy boy, like being able to watch your TV, that's one experience. And then the another experience is being able to like have different opportunities, meet new people, talk to that bus driver, do different. And we're not saying that like you have to do aging a certain way. If you want to be in your lazy boy and watch Bridgerton, like do it. I do too. I want that. But I also want to have options my whole life, right? I
Yeah.
don't want it to be that I can't do that anymore because I'm a certain age, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we just need to be sure. Yeah. So
No, yeah, I feel like I have spent a lot of my life advocating for young people. And then, in very similar ways that you're advocating for older people. And so, but I love this because I feel like, because oftentimes I just felt like everyone was waiting for young people to be able to participate and to be able, we can't wait till you become an adult and you can share who you are with us and really fully participate. And I would be like, no, they're not on the way. Whether you're 2 like your daughter or you're 41 like us, you're a whole person who has contributions to make in a community, right? And I want to learn from you when you're 2. And then so there's no age where you get to start being a whole person that can contribute to a community and that we can learn from you. And at the same time, there's no age where you stop being a full participant in the community, where we can no longer learn from you, where you don't need to participate. And so I'm just
and you
so
can't
grateful.
grow
Yeah,
to be able to grow your whole life
right.
and have a
That's too.
future your whole
Mhm.
life. I think a lot of times before I went back to school and learned about gerontology, I think I kind of assumed that like older people and it's so hard to like make it a category because people are so different. But I assume that older people liked to kind of like look back on their life and reflect. And it's like, not everybody wants to do that.
Mm,
Not everybody had a great childhood.
mm,
Also, even if you like to look back, who doesn't like to look forward? You know, like,
yeah.
and you should have that your whole life, whether you're 96, whether you're 6. And I love it. I mean, working with young people and working with older people, they're people. I'm like, did we learn that at SCAPA, Angela?
Yeah,
Did we learn that? Is that where it came from?
it might be. It might be
And
that.
everybody having that gift and
Mhm.
having like everybody being chosen, or like you're at this audition and you got in. Like
Yeah.
everybody got in. There's no audition.
Yeah.
You're in.
You're in. Yeah. And so we do. I think we're dreaming of a world today, a community today, neighborhoods today, where everyone belongs, where everyone is chosen, where everyone like has a gift that can be brought. Absolutely. Everything you're saying, you know, and yeah, I thank you so much, Laura, for your time today, for all the work that you do, both as a volunteer and then the paid work that you do, all the dreaming and imagining that you do with people that help to make communities places where it's really, really fun and beautiful and good to grow up and grow old. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been fun.